I think that it really centers around identification of a value opportunity, right? And from my main thing that I'm looking for are zoning opportunities, right? Because that's really where my specialty is looking at the zoning landscape and figuring out how do I take advantage of an existing use that could be something better. I have some different ideas I learned through really pitching a tokenized real estate offering about the value of illiquidity as opposed to the value of liquidity.
Yeah, and I was actually just about to ask that because you mention it to me all the time, just how so many people talk about how liquidity is the answer, and that's what a lot of people are seeking. But from your perspective, you think that people should have illiquidity. I don't know if you want to go into your opinion on why that's the case.
So a lot of times when people are talking about investing or you hear about it on social media, everybody talks about cash flow, right? And Bigger Pockets obviously is teaching at the simplified level of you buy a property, it cash flows X number of dollars, and that's your kind of your gateway to having a early retirement, right? Is that cash flow then pays for your lifestyle. The issue with that, and even I saw, I think it was on Instagram, Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets bringing this up about people that get a $2,000 month cash flowing property that after mortgage expenses, whatever else, they have $200 and they forgot about repairs. And so that's creating more work and more risk because you have thin margins on it, right? So that's one side of it, is you can miscalculate on a cash flow and the margin for error is so small that you have a problem on your hands that you then have to deal with and becomes additional effort. The other side of it is where maybe you don't have a problem with margins, you do have cash flow, and the question still is, what do you do with that money? So now you're getting money back. Are you able to reinvest that? Do you want to spend the time to figure out how to reinvest that? So if you have, on the one end, problems with cash flow that doesn't make sense, on the other, you have cash flow that you need to figure out what to do with it and how to reinvest it. And in private real estate markets, it's not the same as a stock account where maybe you've got an automatic reinvestment of your dividend that's happening. And then on the farther end of the spectrum, where you said maybe it's 18 months, maybe it's 2 years, when you get that lump sum of money back from a development project or even a value add property where you've earned money, you've appreciated value, now you've got a profit of $200,000 or $2 million. You still have a problem on your hand of figuring out how do you reinvest that money. And that's why some of the larger institutions, or even some of the smart investors that have been doing it for a while, they start to realize that there's value in diversification of the liquidity of their assets. So you want to have some stuff that is available to you on a cash flowing basis for you to make the decision of reinvestment or contributing to your lifestyle. But then there are other things when you have enough of a nest egg to put it into illiquid investments, because you've got a 9 to 5, you don't have time to figure out what you're going to do with your 200 or 2 million, and you want to put it in a planned exit strategy that has a longer duration on it.
Yeah, and that's where the terminology or the saying, set it and forget it, is honestly an ideal person to invest in a real estate syndication like ours, right? Where you are completely passive and you have all the upside and you're not looking for liquidity. That's the main idea of that saying, right? Set it and forget it. When people invest in the stock market, they don't want to look at it. It's just going to grow over time when they're saying that. And in that case, you may as well put it in some type of real estate syndication or some type of real estate fund, because there is more upside and it tends to beat the stock market historically. But to revert back to what you were saying, I've felt this in real time, and that was the reason I got into real estate development, more on the financial side. separately from me just being intrigued by the whole idea of construction. But I bought my first property a long time ago now, and it brings in a 30% cash on cash. Annual returns are great. But the only reason for that was it's an old house. It's run down. There's a lot of issues that come up all the time. We have a lot of capital improvements that we have to do quite often. And it's only a 2-unit house that was built in the 1800s, right? So there's a mix of that also being a little bit risky. And we paid for the cash flow and it worked out. But there's no value that could be created out of that house anymore. And I don't know if you want to explain how the developer, not to dive into design, but more on structuring the deal, how the developer is actually creating value for themselves, for the investors, and everyone involved.
I think that it really centers around identification of a value opportunity. And from my main thing that I'm looking for are zoning opportunities, right? Because that's really where my specialty is, looking at the zoning landscape and figuring out how do I take advantage of an existing use that could be something better, right? So in the case of your property in New York, you've got, like you said, you got it at a great basis. You've extracted all the value that you really could, though, because you've improved it to the point that, or you've improved it as far as you could to make it livable and top of rent for that submarket, right? And so now it's just a cash flow play, but optimizing your investment is trying to figure out, okay, what do you do now? And so in your case, you could either, you could sell it and reinvest that money somewhere else and let someone who just wants to take that cash flow opportunity and run with it. Or if it was a zoning opportunity, right? So you've only got 2 units on it. Maybe it's got a big surface parking lot next to it or a really big yard, and you could split the lot and you could actually put 6 units on it. Now you're looking at a way to create additional value for that property and for that neighborhood. And that's really the day-to-day job of a developer, is figuring out what that value creation piece is and then bringing it to life. And it's a much longer process, or a much more difficult process than a lot of people think that it is, to take something even as simple as a 2-unit property and try to turn it into 6, because you have a lot of different pieces of the puzzle that need to come together. And if you don't know what you're looking at in advance, you might run into a problem. Just coincidentally, I was talking to a guy at the gym the other day who ran into this exact problem. He bought a property in Liberty City area, I think. I don't know exactly where it is, but he was telling me he was going to follow up with us and see how we could help him, because he bought the property like more than a year ago. And I remember he actually told me that he was planning on doing this, and we just never followed up, and he didn't end up asking me for help initially. And now it's been like a year, and he said as soon as he acquired the property, the code violation people knocked on his door and handed him a ticket, because he didn't have the experience to know that he was walking into these code violations, and whoever it was that was advising him on the real estate side, the title side, didn't tell him that this was a possibility for the unpermitted work. And so now he's got a property that has unpermitted work that he had to pay for to deal with. And it's not just paying for that, because now you've got that lack of permit that he has in place. He then has to either tear it out or go get inspections and get it all up to code. And really his plan is not even to do that. He wanted to add units. And he could have avoided a lot of these problems if he would have known about the development process and known that there were people like us that really specialize in seeing what the opportunity is, underwriting the risk, and helping see that full process through.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, something that's missed, and something that I missed for the longest time until I started going out and trying to learn about development, and then got my master's and stuff in it and everything, was just how involved the cities are in the real estate doings. So you would say in any type of improvement or any type of work that's done on the property, more often than not, you need to touch base with the city, right? Where you need to get some type of permit to do whatever work. And then in most of these real estate books, right, where there's the BRRRR strategy, or there's just the general idea of buying a house, fixing it up, flipping it. There's a lot of work that goes into just filing for permits, receiving them, and then finally being able to go do the work, hire the people, budget it out, go out, pick your finishes. And that's just on the flip side of things. The development side is a whole different animal. And I don't want to go too much into the construction and the budget and all those things.